Next speaker is Joel Cayford, and again, same approach, Joel, 5 minutes, and then probably time for a couple of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the opportunity of addressing the committee. I'm going to try to be here as if you like, a planning academic who's trying not to express opinions and trying to express some of the findings that I've come up with in the last couple of years. I'm doing another PhD for my sins. You'd think I've already got one, I don't need another one, but so I've spent a couple of years on this, and there's some new information here that I want to share with you that I think is relevant. So this is a New Zealand editorial, 2002. I see this in an editorial today. This is at the front. Auckland is a city generally well endowed with parks and reserves with one glaring reception. Its downtown waterfront area is a model of urban utilitarianism. Only Victoria Park offers a pocket of green to disturb the phalanx of grey, and remedying that deficiency should be a key thrust of the scheme that emerges eventually from the efforts of the Auckland Waterfront Advisory Group. So 12 years ago, and we're sort of there again today. Now, if you look at this area, oh, whoops, can't get my game away quite yet. We go, this area here is all reclaimed. All of this is reclaimed land. So if I just go back up to there, by 1973, 162 hectares of land had been reclaimed from seabed by the Harbour Board. And then 27.5% of that was vested for industrial uses, railways, post office, gas works, bus terminal by the Auckland Harbour Board. So about a quarter. About another quarter was vested with Auckland City Council for the street network. You can see quite an extensive street network that's in there. It all takes up space. And today, Ports of Auckland, which replaced the Auckland Harbour Board, operates the port on 55 hectares of reclaimed land, which is largely the reclamation here that we know about. So what about the other land and wharves? Because there's others that are there. And what about new land and wharves? So this is just a Google image of our waterfront area. And I'm going to talk about some Ports of Auckland rents and sales over the years in the other area. So the first one, 1965, the Harbour Board doubled the GFA, ground floor area, in its downtown development plans to increase its rents to 1.43 million per annum. So it was interested in the rentals from the development downtown, and that's one of the reasons we got the high rise down there. In 97, Ports sold its 98-year lease over Prince's Wharf for 26 million, and that's what led to the development on Prince's Wharf. Sold 18 hectares of viaduct land for 75 million in 98, which is where a lot of the residential development is now. In 2008, sold Queen's Wharf to the ARC and government for 40 million. It's not all of the sales and rents, and I've tried to get others because essentially a large part of the port's business is as a property developer and real estate manager. Now, Wellington's Waterfront, I want to talk about the Wellington Harbour Board approach with Wellington City Council. All of this area through here is a sort of similar area to Auckland's waterfront that has been...
Joel, could you also show that? Could you also...
Just both sides,
sorry. So this is, so this is the area that was made surplus, well, I'll just say here. 74, Chairman of Wellington Harbour Board said, the Harbour Board will, for all practical purposes, vacate lands on the southern side of Lambton Harbour. Land areas of Taranaki Street, Jervoy Quay could then be released for municipal purposes. This will be of immense significance for the future of Wellington. So that was the stance of the chairman of the Wellington Harbour Board then. And then in 86, it's the intention of both parties, this is the Wellington Harbour Board, Wellington City Council, this is a legal agreement, the intention of both parties to implement the concept plan to the fullest extent in its provision of open spaces, recreational facilities and other amenities used and enjoyment by the public which would not otherwise be achievable. So this was the approach that was taken in Wellington. Now, my research interest really, in terms of how things came about, is sparked by what happened on Prince's Wharf. Now, this is an image that was published in the Herald and various other places to show what was going to happen on Prince's Wharf, and what we ended up in that same position as this, and the planning documents at the time required that 35% of Prince's Wharf's area would be public open space. 35%, a third. Now, this is an image from the Kitchener Group's application for the development, which was supported by the Ports of Auckland Limited, part of its resource consent application showing how the public would use that space. And what we've ended up with is that, and if you like, the public promise that was given was never delivered. Now, if I just show here, this is Roland O'Regan, who was chair of the Wellington Harbour Board. He wrote, some harbour boards, we need to understand that not all harbour boards are the same. Some harbour boards, seeking to protect themselves against sudden falls in income, war, depression, industrial action, have endeavoured to get areas of seabed vested in themselves so they have power to create income-earning industrial land. And he said Auckland Harbour Board not only has large areas of the harbour vested in it, which Wellington Harbour Board does not, but receives $1 million a year in rents from residential property. Now, this is in 1974. I've tried to get more accurate information, but I've been denied how the extent to which Ports of Auckland depends on its real estate business. Now, going back to Wellington, Ports of Auckland, Ports of Wellington...
Another couple of minutes, Joel.
Thank you.
Yep.
Continues. So in 1990, because it hasn't all been fantastic in Wellington. They had a retail and event centre was built at Queen's Wharf that was public concern. Details emerged from Lambton Harbour Development Limited, which was equivalent to our waterfront development agency, of high-rise plans. Now, there was a huge public backlash. 1,000 people attended a public meeting, and Mayor Blumsky and the council led a major shift in direction and a huge communication, huge engagement with the public. Mayor Blumsky called for a moratorium on further development pending a thorough community consultation exercise. This was because of what was happening. This is all quoted from their documentation. A community consultation committee was established by Wellington City Council with representatives from those bodies. You can see Chamber of Commerce, Institute of Architects, Historic Places Trust, many of the sort of groups who were here with Heart of the City perhaps this morning. And a significant outcome was their decision, Wellington City Council's decision to commission Athfield Architects, Megan Raitt Landscape Architects to prepare an open space concept plan for the whole Lambton Harbour space. Now, I point out that it was the whole Lambton Harbour area that was made available at a time. It wasn't piece by piece as has happened in Auckland. So the major findings that were, this is the findings from the research, was, these are the findings, quotes again, future development of Lambton Harbour area needs to focus on meeting the needs of Wellington people first and foremost. Only then should it look at the requirements of visitors and tourists. Public space areas should be designed first, with commercial built environment to follow. Self-funding policy of Lambton Harbour needs to be reconsidered. Future sites should be leased rather than sold. Lambton Harbour is a public asset. There's been a loss of public confidence in the direction the project has taken, and I argue we're at the tip of the iceberg of that is happening in Auckland now. Both the Wellington City Council District Plan and the Lambton Harbour Concept Plan need to be revised to take account of the report's recommendations. So this is, they developed a Lambton Harbour Open Space Master Plan, and I've only shown a couple of images. This was prepared by Athfield and Megan Raitt. You can see here some of the green spaces that were part of that plan here and here. There were 5 inner harbour green spaces and some on the harbour edge spaces. This is another part of it. You can see here, of course, we know they have the museum. Museums here, and there are other green spaces. A lot of these areas you will recognise if you go down there. They're only there because they're in the concept plan that was prepared as a consequence of this community consultation, the Lambton Harbour Open Space Master Plan. So, my last slide, Auckland can learn from Wellington. We need to really understand that Ports of Auckland's particular focus is on meeting its own objectives at the expense of broader public interest outcomes. It needs to be recognised and resisted. And the ports are acting in their own best interest, and that's understandable. The ports has always been a property developer. The property has been at the expense of the seabed, if you like, and then gradually surplus areas are sold or whatever and developed. And this is what is happening now. It's what happened on Prince's Wharf, it's what's happening in Queen's Wharf, etc. and what's at risk of Queen Elizabeth Square.
Here, here.
Auckland's current piecemeal approach to CBD waterfront planning and development, which is what is happening, where public spaces and places are incrementally lost to and compromised by private interests, it needs to stop, and this is the body to stop it. Wellington's public engagement processes and the outcomes that have resulted provide Auckland with ideas and processes it can learn from. Auckland Council needs to meaningfully engage with the stakeholders and the public to produce a CBD waterfront master plan, which is staged and budgeted, necessary plan changes, and require that public and private outcomes are delivered with equal priority. And this is different from what has happened, is where the private developments happen first, even though there are public promises in the plans that are promulgated, and then later, much later, possibly, the public amenity is provided. And that is a risk we're going down at the moment, where, if you like, precinct is developed in downtown first, loss of Queen Elizabeth Square, and maybe jam tomorrow.
Thank you, John. Take a couple of questions, and remember it's questions of clarification, not statements. Councillor Darby.
Thank you, Joel. And just in terms of your suggestion that there needs to be this broad waterfront master plan for the city centre, I guess the response to that is, well, we're littered with plans already, and you're familiar with a lot of those plans. Are you saying that those plans do not match the comprehensive waterfront development plans that Wellington embarked on?
Wellington set up, right at the outset, a joint working process between the Port, Wellington Harbour Board, later Ports of Wellington Limited, and itself, Wellington City Council, which stayed together throughout, and it set up an implementation wing, Lambton Harbour Development Limited, rather like C+ City. When the Super City was formed, the idea was that there was to be a waterfront master plan produced, but Waterfront Auckland's jurisdiction was narrowly constrained really to Wynyard Quarter and Queen's Wharf. And then the ports retained its jurisdiction, and then Auckland Council retained its jurisdiction, and this is why we have the City Centre Integration Group. But at the moment, we have a number of different plans that are coming up, but they're not integrated. We've had the downtown framework, but that is not a master plan. It's a set of ideas. And a master plan is when these set of ideas come together in a meaningful and real way, and they're costed, and they're staged so that things can happen. We don't have a master plan like that.
Okay. Councillor Walker.
Sure. So you mentioned last the City Centre Integration Group. Of course, you're familiar with that, and you know that that is a grouping of parts of council, but it doesn't include the community and the wider groups within that community. So just expanding on that, and as a question, how easy would it be to set up such a group along the lines of what they did in Wellington, and what would be the appetite, do you think, from the grouping that we've heard this morning and others?
I'll give John a moment to think about that. Dr. Blakely and myself were just having exactly that discussion, and I think when we get to the Central City Wharves debate, I think that's part of the discussion we need to have. So it may be more for us than actually to get Dr. Cavard to answer that question. So I would imagine his answer would be yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the short answer is these things are never easy to do, but they're the right thing to do. And I think Wellington City Council's approach, when things started to fall apart and the community got grumpy, then the Wellington City Council, under Blumsky, they decided we'll have a community consultation. And you've got to remember it was serviced by the Wellington City Council's urban design unit, so that we're very much a part of it. It wasn't a separate thing. And it worked through, I think it worked through its issues in less than a year. And it provided a set of recommendations, and I've only told you about one of those. It's a sort of, they're very thick reports, and they're wonderful reports. I've only got 5 minutes, and I'm sorry that I'm taking a bit more time than I should. But there are a number of recommendations on there, and really it echoes what's happened in Auckland. And public confidence was really significantly enhanced in the process, public engagement, and I think that the landscape or the public space strategy that emerged from Athfields and Megan Rate was a fundamental part in gaining confidence.
Okay, that's probably a good point at which to thank you. I'll move that we thank Joel for his public input. Is there
Happy to
a
second.
seconder? Councillor Cooper is going to second that. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say
Aye.
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 Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Joel.